This is the Hoftime Report with Idaho Freedom Foundation President Wayne Hoffman, one of Idaho's most respected, influential public policy voices.
Hey everybody, good to be back with you. I'm in the RV again in Boise, and gonna talk a little bit about the special legislative session that Governor Little is planning on doing. Breaking news, we're told that the session is likely going to be on or around September 1. Now I want to make it clear that I said on Saturday that a special legislative session is welcome because the session can be used to give money back to Idahoans. By the way, let me know if you can hear me again. I always apologize. I really think that it looks on my end like the audio is working correctly. If it's not, then I hope you'll let me know in the chat and I can fix it like I did a couple of nights ago. In any event, until I hear otherwise, I'll keep talking. The special session is likely going to be on or around September 1st, and I wrote a column on last Saturday, that said a special legislative session would be a welcome thing because the session could be used to okay, yes, thanks, Lamont. I'll be sure to do that. A special legislative session could be used for the purpose of lowering taxes. The state has collected $2 billion more than it needed. So you cannot hear me fantastically. Can you hear me at all? I guess that's to say that you can't hear me, but I should speak up perhaps. Maybe if I talk louder, it'll help. Would that make the difference? I'll talk louder and then I'll wait for the chat to catch up to me. But so the special session is supposed to be on September 1st. And I like the idea of a special session because of the fact that, the state has collected $2 billion more than it needs. And it's our money, so it should come back to us. The question becomes whether the legislature and the governor are capable of delivering on that kind of a simple commitment. And as it turns out, the answer is no. The special session will be used to return some money to Idahoans, but not very much. On a $2 billion surplus, where you could potentially get rid of the income tax or pretty close to it. You certainly could lower the income tax to near zero. Okay, I'm getting two conflicting messages here. One says they can hear me, the other says they can't hear me very well. I'm going to continue talking louder because there's not much I can do more than what I'm doing now. So the special session would be used to cut some taxes a little bit. The rate would go from, as I've seen in some drafts, 6.0 to 5.8 on a surplus where you could basically take the income tax to near zero. Or we collect, or statewide, we collect about $2 billion in property taxes. You could pretty much get rid of property taxes if you wanted to, if you were really ambitious. So we're not doing that. That's not what's happening here. We're just going to give another measly breadcrumb tax cut, giving only a small portion of your money back. And the rest of it, what's going to happen to the rest of it? Well, some of it will continue to sit there, and the rest will go into a fund for Idaho's public schools. Now, bear in mind, the legislature met last legislative session and increased spending for public schools 12.5%. What's changed since March? What's happened that requires another $400 million, that's the number, going into the public school system? The answer is nothing has changed. And in fact, the head of the state school board of education and the executive director of the state board of education said very recently, it's going to take several years to see if the increase that the legislature has already allocated to public schools is going to work. So why are they doing this? Why is the legislature and the governor, I should say the governor because he's the one that's calling the special session, why are they doing this? Well, the answer is very simple. This is their way of capitulating to Reclaim Idaho, the socialist group that's put Proposition 1 on the ballot. Now, Reclaim Idaho wanted to raise about $320 million. They wrote the initiative wrong, so now it'll raise about $570 million if it's passed. But keep this in mind, Reclaim Idaho only, it's not the right word, but only wanted to raise $320 million. The governor is proposing to increase the spending for public schools by more than $400 million. Do you see the problem here? Here you have another Republican governor who is trying to out-left the left. Isn't that amazing? This governor is basically capitulating to Reclaim Idaho. There's not been a shot fired. There's not been an ad sent out. There's nothing that's happened. And yet, rather than go out and oppose Proposition 1, our governor has decided to basically go along with what Proposition 1 is designed to do, which is dump a bunch of money in the government school system. Now, what do you suppose is going to happen with that money? Where is it going to go? Because we've already dumped a lot of money in the public school system. I'll tell you what's going to happen. The school system is going to continue doing what it always does, which is promote leftism, promote the transgender agenda, do more critical race theory and social justice indoctrination, keep teaching our kids that America is a terrible place. And most importantly, despite all the money that has been dumped in the public education system over the last 10 years, they're going to continue underperforming. If you go to our LEAD map, that's LEAD, LEAD map.org, you can see how our schools are performing. They're not doing well despite all the money that's been pumped in. And it's not just COVID and kids learning from home or learning loss during the summer. This is normal. The state's test scores, which I think are watered down from the tests that kids used to be given years ago, show that a majority of kids in the public school system are unable to read, write, do math, know anything about history, and we've given them a lot of money. We're going to give them more money. Now, I will tell you this. If you want to do something worthy with $400 million in the public education system, which you should be doing, it would be an easy thing to do, is replace the federal money that's going into the school lunch program. But why is that important? What would happen if we replaced the money going into the school lunch program? Very, very simple. Joe Biden and the socialists in Washington, D.C. will no longer be able to control our schools via the lunch program. The schools have been told that if you take $1 of federal money, then you're going to have to put in place transgender bathrooms and transgender pronoun policies and refer to students by their chosen pronouns and so forth. You could end that immediately if you just replace the federal money with state money. The federal government shouldn't be paying for school lunches anyway. Not only is education not in the Constitution, but I'm pretty damn sure the Constitution doesn't say anything about school feeding programs. So end the federal funding for school lunch programs, and maybe you might have some use for the $400 million that Governor Little wants to dump into public schools. But that's not what he's doing here. All he's trying to do is outspend the leftists who were behind Proposition 1. And to give cover for what he's doing, he's going to give you a token tax cut. And he's going to say that's going to do something for inflation. That's the plan, folks. That's what the governor has in mind. He's better at being a leftist than now some of the leftists are. And I said on the radio, I may as well repeat it here, that the real problem is you have a bunch of beta males running state government who refuse to stand up for conservative principles. Instead, they capitulate at the slightest agitation from the left. Now, is that because they don't want the fight, or it's because they benefit from some of the leftists who are voters for them? I'll let you decide the answer to that question. We could talk about that more another time. But, to me, and what I've seen over the last 30 years is basically the latter. that the governor, the legislative leadership, many state legislators, they have a cozy relationship with the leftists. They always have, and they squawk about, things that the folks on the left do because it helps score points for conservatives who don't know any better. So the traditional formula for winning and controlling government in Idaho is to talk about how pro-life you are, talk about how you support the Second Amendment, and talk about the tax cuts that you voted for. And if that's not enough to convince conservatives that you're on their side, then you mention how terrible Joe Biden is, or Barack Obama, or Nancy Pelosi. Um, but in reality, what these folks have been doing is working with the left to grow Idaho government, and that's the problem. That's what you're seeing play out in spades with the Reclaim Idaho petition and with the special session that's now being called for apparently, we think, September 1st. So, love to answer some of your questions if you have some. Caitlin, is he a rhino? I don't really get into the whole, Republican and name only thing. The idea for me is you look at their voting record, you look at at their their achievements and what they believe is the proper role of government, the way they react to emergencies, the way they appropriate money, and the sum total of their record should tell you exactly where they are. And for many years, we've had legislators who and governors who vote and sign bills to grow government because they don't trust the free market. I love this question here. Is Idaho turning purple? The answer is Idaho is already purple. You just don't know it. See, what happens here in Idaho is if you want to run for office, you put an R next to your name. And they're doing that in spades in certain areas of the state more so than others. For example, you may or may not know this, but Bruce Newcomb, who was the House Speaker for many years, was a Democrat. He was from Cassia County. He ran as a Democrat for several offices and couldn't win. And so Jim Jones, his buddy, convinced him to run as a Republican, and he won. But he's still through and through a Democrat. He's not a Republican at all. He voted for big government. He supported big government. He went to work for big government after he got out of the House. And there are plenty of other folks who fit that bill as well. They couldn't make it as a Democrat, so they ran and become Republicans. And that's kind of the story of Idaho politics for many years. David, there's no doubt that the governor is certainly not living up to his full potential, and in fact is causing the state to face issues it otherwise shouldn't face because our policies are pretty mediocre. They're not super conservative at all. Maybe they're not as bad as California, Washington, or Oregon, but they're still pretty darn bad. We have a progressive income tax. We have government regulations all across the board. We tax everything under the sun. We punish people for stupid crimes that shouldn't exist. There's just a lot of things like that. And then, of course, we give power to special interest groups like the teachers union. Teachers union, which have a legal collective bargaining right, because that's what the legislature and governor gave to them. We fund things like Idaho Public Television and Boise State Public Radio, which air national public radio, which is completely off the range in terms of being a centrist news operation. It's leftist gobbledygook where they just talk about, pro-abortion stuff. They talk about how Trump is terrible, everybody's a racist, and occasionally they talk about some arts, but only in the context of the white supremacist white supremacy. How terrible the patriarchy is and all this other bullshit. So anyway, we pay for that. You as a taxpayer pay for that. You give money to the Sierra Club and Idaho Conservation League via Idaho law. You give money to big corporations using your tax dollars via Idaho law. It's been a corporate playground and a lobbyist wet dream for many, many years. And unfortunately, we haven't done anything about it. Now we know. And I think people have woken up. I mean, we've known it for many years. We've seen it for many years, and we've been trying to warn people about it for many years, chiefly through the Freedom Index, telling people, look, you've got legislators that vote exactly like leftist Democrats, and here's the evidence. We didn't make this stuff up. So we can fix this, but it requires an active participation. So everybody who's watching this video needs to call the governor's office, and that's 208-334-2100, and tell him that this is completely inappropriate for a Republican governor in a conservative state to just hand over a victory to the socialists at Reclaim Idaho. That is so stupid. That is infuriatingly stupid. They're going to give you a token tax cut and pat you on the back and tell you have a nice day. Very, very unfortunate. It could be so much better. Could be so much better, and it just isn't. And unfortunately, yeah, I don't know if we want another Cecil Andrews, because there are a lot of things that Cecil Andrews did that was pretty terrible. But at least he was honest about who he was, I guess, versus some of these folks in the Idaho legislature and the governor's office who tell you they're conservative and meanwhile vote to grow government and do things that are no different from what the socialists would do if they were in power. So we have our work cut out for us. I really want to see everybody, share this video and our blog posts and various other things at idahofreedom.org with your friends and colleagues and your email lists, because this word needs to get out, and they need to let the governor know that this is completely unacceptable. This is not what you expect from a governor, Republican governor no less, in a conservative state. You're just basically doing what the leftists want you to do. If Reclaim Idaho doesn't take a victory lap over this special legislative session as it's currently contemplated, then they're not doing what they need to be doing correctly. So it's clearly a victory for them. Clearly a victory for them. And but we can stop it if enough people call and write the governor's office and tell him this is absolutely unacceptable. So again, I thank you for watching. I hope you'll be sure to again like and subscribe to this program, and share it with whomever you can. And be sure to tune in tomorrow for Brian Hyde with Nowhere to Hide, where he critiques the latest news from the legacy news media and throw some truth on their BS. So thanks again for watching. I apologize also for underdressing a little bit, but I'm again sitting in the RV. It's very hot in here. I've got the engine going, but I would otherwise die if I turned the air off and maybe put on another shirt. But anyway, thanks for your indulgence, and look forward to talking with you guys again next week.
You've